welcome back to our Life Derek DLC. We are now heading into Boardwalk. Here we go. It was early morning, but the day was already buzzing with excitement. Your whole family was gathered together with all five Suarez's in their cozy living room. Today, you were all making a trip out to a boardwalk set park. It was a regular enough outing for Derek's family, but it would be your first time going. The boardwalk was a few hours away, and it was even further when setting out from some Sunset Bird. That's why the adults decided on the meetup here at the Suarez's apartment instead of gathering at the boardwalk itself. He gave your moms a little break from driving, and everyone got their last chance to run for the bathroom. You will be leaving very soon. While you were waiting for the trip to officially start, you sat on the couch with your hands in your lap. For a few minutes now, you tried to keep track of what the group gathered around the kitchen counter were up to. Elizabeth, your moms, and Miss Suarez were all busily making preparations from what you could tell. Meanwhile, Mr. Suarez had his hands full rounding up his two youngest kids. It seemed that they were taking an anti-shoe stance that morning, and in Nicholas's case, he needed to be talked into wearing a shirt too. On the cushion next to you, Derek was pumped for what the boardwalk had to offer. He was rambling a mile a minute about all the stuff he couldn't wait to show you. You're excited about it, you're nervous about how busy it would be, you're simply happy because Derek was happy. I like both of these answers. I'm excited about it though. Bouncing your leg, you struggle to contain your energy. You're just as eager to experience everything he described. The journey was also the first time your and Derek's family were doing a big event together. You couldn't believe it originally when the adults went through with organizing the trip. Kids, come join us in the kitchen. It's time to pack your treat bags. Treat bags? Sliding off the couch, you didn't have the faintest idea what Miss Suarez meant, but you were summoned, and so you followed Derek's lead. He turned to say something over his shoulder. He guessed that line might have been confusing to a newcomer. The snack bags are what we do for larger trips. Me and my brothers and you and Elizabeth too. We get to fill a little plastic baggie with any sweets and stuff we want. Oh, it's supposed to be for eating during the hours-long drive, but no one really cares when we snack. It's just so we have something if we need it. Lucky, that's the coolest idea. I think so too. It's great to have on hand. As you reached the kitchen, Elizabeth breezed past you with your moms following at a more relaxed pace. Derek raised a skeptical brow and pointed in her direction with his thumb. Doesn't she want a bag? Elizabeth stopped and spun around on her heel. Surprised, Derek pulled his hand back to his side. Elizabeth's lip curled into an all-too-pleased smirk. You heard Miss Suarez. She called for the kids to come. Ma shook her head at Elizabeth's taunting display. Your sister stepped forward and held up a zip bag that you hadn't noticed before. I already got mine while we were getting things set up for the rest of you. Her bag was full of dried fruits and chocolate chips. She teasingly dangled it in your face and then in Derek's. Very mature, Elizabeth. You're not one of the kids at all. You snickered at her, you stuck out your tongue, you shook your head, you rolled your eyes, you just stared. You shook your head. There was little that you found amusing about her teasing, and it was written all over your face. Elizabeth withdrew her bag of treats, letting her hands rest at her sides. After that, she left the kitchen and plopped down in your old spot on the couch. Your moms joined her, putting Elizabeth in the middle, while comfortably patted Elizabeth's leg. 'Cause isn't Elizabeth just like 2 or 3 years older than us? Glancing back towards the kitchen, George and Nicholas were finally dressed and they dashed ahead of you. They excitedly crowded around their mom's legs. Now don't forget that the bag actually has to be able to close for it to count. She began passing out baggies to her two youngest, and then Miss Suarez turned to you and winked. That's my one rule for the treat bags, but other than that, feel free to go crazy. I want candy now. Nicholas and George took that as their cue to rush up to the counter lined with tasty options and started stuffing their bags. Miss Suarez handed you and Derek your own plastic baggies. Now that it was in your hand, you realized that it was the smallest zip bag size. There was no way you were going to get a little bit of everything. From my experience, you can fit about 4 handfuls of stuff before it starts getting too tough to close. Answer before I could even ask. Thanks, mind reader. The younger boys swiftly finished selecting their road trip treats. George's bag closed easily, while Nicholas's was proving a challenge to squeeze shut. The plastic was ballooned out on the sides, entirely full of cookies and candy. His brow pinched as he struggled with the zip. To everyone's surprise, Nicholas got it sealed, and he proudly held the bag up for his mom's inspection. Impressed, she nodded. Don't forget to take a water bottle, too. We don't want to lose anyone to dehydration today. Yeah, you don't want that. Dehydration is crazy. The two boys held their prizes tightly and grabbed the water bottles off the edge of the counter on their way out the kitchen. It was your turn now at the buffet, and the spread was delicious. Ooh, fruit gummy candies, peanuts, almonds, walnuts, plain crackers, sunflower seeds, shortbread cookies, chocolate chips, granola, cereal, dried cranberries, dried apples, dried mangoes. Alright, fruit gummy candies. I don't think gummies would taste delicious with other stuff mixed into it. Sandwich cookies. And, I wish there was chocolate, like straight up chocolate. There's chocolate chips, I guess. And shortbread cookies? Alright. I picked 4 things. Enjoy. Humming happily, you ran your hand across the side of the plastic baggie. You're grateful for your haul, and you probably showed it to Derek. He gave you a thumbs up. Variety is a spice of life. You closed his bag, and you realized that it was completely full of a bunch of different things, too. Chuckling, you gently poked the straining side of his plastic baggie. Yes, it is. Derek leaned across the counter for the water bottles. He slid one over for you to take and grabbed one for himself, too. Okay, I'll close up the packs, then. We can leave this out here for now. We don't have any more time to lose. Are we all ready? Several voices called back, answering yes. Miss Suarez raised an eyebrow and walked out of the kitchen. No one needs to go potty. No, I don't have to go to potty. Okay. Anyone have questions before we go? She put her hands on her hips and glanced around the apartment. Mr. Suarez raised his hand just as he caught her eye. I'd like to know how we will arrange the rides. There's room for 5 in the back of our car and room for 3 in the Melody car. There's room to switch who's bringing who if there's one for it. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Elizabeth and Michiko are welcome to ride with us, or Derek can feel free to go with Pamela and Nolani. Nicholas and George are staying in our van, though. Frustrated, both smaller boys pouted at their exclusion. George's jaw clenched as he crossed his arm. I'm not a baby. Why do I gotta stay in the van? I'm not a baby. Nicholas, you know you still need a booster seat. We can't put that in their car. Mr. Suarez chuckled at Nicholas's angry grumbling as he passed by into the kitchen, aiming to pick up the remaining snacks. Miss Suarez sighed in a tickle, but not still a long-suffering way. Dad and I need you there to stay awake for such a long drive. Can you two please keep us company on the car ride? Releasing a deep breath, George nodded. He knew this wasn't the day his mom was going to relent. Nicholas, on the other hand, continued to pout. Okay, Mom. Well, what do you think, Lonnie? Either way is fine with me. It's up to the kids to decide which they prefer. I'll stick with Mom's. She then curiously shifted her attention to you, the corner of your mouth pulled into a smirk, because she knew that you and your friend were the ones that whole decision was for. Derek leaned in close to you, cupping hands to the side of his mouth so only you could hear him. Michiko, what are you thinking? I want to ride with you. It makes sense for everyone to ride with their parents. I want to ride with the Suarez's. Derek should ride with us. Well, if he's alright with that, what are you thinking? I want you to ride with me. Your mom's reassuring nods gave you the confidence to find out what Derek thought about your bold statement. His skin seemed a shade pinker, but he scratched the back of his neck and beamed. Yeah, all cute. Alright. I mean, the whole point is me trying to fall in love with you. Or more like you trying to fall in love with me, because my girl already loves you. His delight sorry, Nicholas. His delight faltered as Nicholas darted across the room to him. He silently stared with big, sad eyes. Sorry, Nico. We'll be back together at the Boardwalk real soon. I promise. Promise. Derek patted on the top of his brother's head and the boy's side. There was still a sourness clinging to his expression, but he didn't seem as defeated anymore. Okay, now that that's settled, we'll see you there. Hold on, one last thing. Miss Suarez went over to your mom's and quickly went into some last-minute advice on the directions. While you waited, you noticed out of the corner of your eye, Mrs. Suarez had moved on from nibbling at the snacks. Instead, you caught him passing George and Nicholas an extra cookie each. Genuine cheer came back from both of their expressions. They were so thrilled about the secret cookies that Nicholas's bitterness over the car ride and George's frustration over being babied were both sweetened out. And that was that. Snacks and drinks were set. No one needed to go to potty. The rides were arranged, directions were obtained, and it was finally time to get that trip started. The two families left the condo behind, chattering with eagerness for the day's activities. At the parking lot, the group split up to get into their different cars. This is going to be fun. Elizabeth automatically went to claim her usual seat, but you stopped her. She pouted but climbed back out and impatiently tapped her foot on the ground. Did you forget we have company? On autopilot, Ma slid behind the steering wheel with ease, and Mom hopped in the front seat. It wasn't until they were buckled in that they both realized the back seat was oddly still empty. What's the holdup? We have to decide the seats. Don't worry about that. The middle is calling my name. I'm the third wheel anyways. Chewing at your bottom lip, there wasn't any more time left to lose, so you didn't try to argue with him. Elizabeth happily climbed into the car and took her usual spot. This worked out perfectly. Derek settled into his chosen spot and sat up perfectly straight. You climbed in after him, appreciative that you and your sister ended up in your usual places at the opposite ends of the car. Are we all ready now? We're buckled. I would have put Elizabeth in the middle anyway because she's kind of too tall. Roger that. We'll have you all free and having fun in no time. Thanks for letting me join for the ride. It's no trouble at all. We'd love to have you as a guest. The second Mo was done pulling the car out, a wide grin hooked her lips. Excitedly, she shimmied her shoulders as she drove. I read about our destination recently, and it sounded just lovely. I'm so happy we're doing this today. That's an understatement if I ever heard one. Lonnie studied up on this place like it was her job. Mom teasingly twisted to deliver that last part to the three of you in the back directly. Giggling, Ma shrugged. Can you blame me? I don't want to miss anything. I understand that. There's just so much stuff to see and do, and it's all packed into that one place. That's impressive. It'll be a good day then. Well, I don't want any spoilers. I want to see what's there when we get there. All right, Elizabeth, I won't say anything. Does anyone want music? Depends on whose turn it is to pick. How about we let Derek have a turn? That's nice of you, Miss Melody. Elizabeth gasped in surprise, and Derek awkwardly fiddled with his fingers in his lap. She childishly stuck her tongue out, but he wasn't bothered by her antics at all. Derek shrugged it off and thought hard about how he should answer. He wasn't going to squander this opportunity. Pressing his mouth into a hard line, Derek peeked over in your direction. You gave him a tiny wave, and he leaned closer, whispering like you two were having a team huddle. I'm not sure what call to make. Would be good to do here. Honestly, Pop. Cool, let's go with that then. Quietly chuckling to herself, Elizabeth smirked at everything working out for her. She settled in for the pleasant ride. I assumed she liked Pop. Because, we're going to the boardwalk, so you might as well play some poppy music. Elizabeth then pulled out her baggie of snacks and popped a few cranberries into her mouth. She grabbed another handful to nibble at while you thought about your own baggie. Decided to have some snacks too. You ate everything you had. You saved all your snacks for later. Just have some snacks now. All it took was one look and your stomach felt envious. You pulled your zip baggie out and decided to treat yourself to a handful too. You noticed that Derek didn't touch his zip bag of snacks at all. He continued to twiddle his fingers and sit quietly. The rest of the ride went by with comfortable conversation rolling between the group of you, and all the while the music played on. Both families pulled into a parking lot, and the kids excitedly bounced out of the cars. The parents cheerfully waved at each other as the group closed the distance between them. Next to you, Derek braced for impact as his younger brother bolted straight ahead, aiming right for him. Over the moon to be reunited, Nicholas tightly wrapped himself around his big brother. Hey, I missed you too. Missed you. Derek managed to untangle his sibling's limbs enough so he could bend down and give Nicholas a hug. The 6-year-old eventually released his legs in full so they could walk hand in hand back to their family. With everyone regrouped, the family strode onto the boardwalk, your eyes widened. The place was even more amazing than you imagined. I'm very curious to see how the brothers all look as they get older, because we already know how Derek looks. He instantly got a growth spurt and became tall and buff. It was like you stepped into a bright world of color. There were shops displaying various beach towels and boogie boards decorated with either popular cartoon characters or tropical flowers. I wish I went to a boardwalk during the summertime, but I didn't have time. And it's like, I think 4 hours away from me or something, and that's a long drive. Clothing stalls had racks of sundresses, cover-ups, and swimwear in different patterns imaginable. And ahead you could make out the colorful tufts of stuffed animals from the prize boards. Darts, ring toss, skee ball, and more weight further down the boardwalk. Music filled the air, but when you listened closely, you could make out so much more. There were various cheers and shouts of victory, joy, and fear. The screams had to be coming from the massive wooden roller coaster that towered beyond the stalls. From what you could tell, this boardwalk was easily 5 times the scale of the entire shopping street in Sunset Bird. You loved it. You still preferred your own town shoreside tourist trap. You suddenly felt uncomfortable. You were in good spirits. You didn't know what to think. You loved it. It was exhilarating, taking the scope of the boardwalk in. You were going to implode if you didn't start exploring soon. The group began navigating down the wooden boards, and Suarez hastily grabbed onto Nicholas's arm for safekeeping, and just in time, too. The bustling move of the area had Nicholas raring to go. He wanted to see, play, and explore every inch. Unfortunately, the 4 parents were not as energetic as the hyper 6-year-old. With an affectionate shake of her head, Miss Suarez struggled to hold on to Nicholas's tiny hand as he attempted to sprint ahead. Irene, why not let the children go? This child here and the rest of them, I'm sure they'd rather enjoy the park on their own and at their own pace. They'd be safe with each other. She carefully weighed the scenarios in her mind while Nicholas was too busy trying to forcibly move her forward to notice the important conversation happening. Your mom shared a glance. I'd be alright with that. I'd be alright. I'd be alright with that as long as nobody left the boardwalk. It's large, but not too large. The kids are getting older, and they've earned a little freedom from all our eye-seeing. All-seeing eyes? Yeah, all-seeing eyes, not all eye-seeing. Okay, adults and kids get to have their own day at the boardwalk. You caught both Elizabeth and Derek parking up. This was clearly a sign of a perfect day ahead for the two. And then Miss Suarez passed Nicholas off to her husband for a moment. She mentioned for the older kids to circle closer to her. No more treats for Nicholas. He's had enough candy and cookies for the day. I'm counting on you to keep to that. Mr. Suarez over there can't be trusted. He stood up straighter and looked away from his wife, pretending that he had no idea what she was talking about. Her knowing smile cracked into a lighthearted laugh. You admired the way her eyes sparkled, teasing her husband. She moved her attention back to the rest of you, and both George and Elizabeth gave her confident nods. We've got this, Mom. Derek answered with an added thumbs up. Miss Suarez proudly beamed, letting her gaze go between her boys. No need to worry, you can count on us. Oh, speaking of getting things, I have some money on hand for me and my brothers. Will you and Elizabeth be able to buy ride tickets and knickknacks or any of that sort of stuff? I doubt the pocket change I have is going to be enough for anything. I remember a wallet. Well, I've got a nickel. I didn't bring any money found wordlessly. Why wouldn't you bring your wallet at a time like this? You confidently put your hands on your hips, unimpressed. Elizabeth rolled her eyes. Good for you. We were going to spend money on you two today, so there's no harm if we let you have it. Besides, we don't get to go on trips like this every day. Go a little wild. Exactly. We want you to be able to do things here. Mom dug into her purse and then she pulled out a handful of bills. She carefully counted out $15 and handed it to Elizabeth. Your sister was unimpressed at that amount and recounted the bills herself. Mom handed you your own $15 next, and you quietly chuckled to yourself. You couldn't help but think about how it probably would have been a 20 if Mr. Holden was there. Thanks, I'll use this wisely. Thanks, Moms. We're all set then. We'll meet again here at 8 p.m. in front of this first stall. 8 p.m.? We're staying here all day? Or, well, I don't know what time they actually came here, because technically at this time setting could be like 2 p.m. or something. Miss Juarez took her youngest arm and crouched down to his level. She brushed some stray hairs out of his face. Go and stay with your brothers today. Be good for them. With an eager nod, Nicholas bolted over to Derek and clung onto his jeans. Derek laughed at the sudden weight and put his hands firmly on the younger boy's shoulder, just in case he decided to run off. The two set of parents disappeared in the crowd, moving towards the nearby stores. Standing on your tiptoes, you caught your moms waving goodbye one last time before they're completely out of sight. Elizabeth spun in a circle, spotting all the things she might want to try. She must have deemed the boardwalk to be cool because she was cheerier by the second. Eventually, her gaze returned to Eunice Suarez's brothers, and it was clear that her daydreams crashed back to reality. Next to her, George rocked up to his tiptoes and then back down. Catching her eye, he stopped and nervously inched a little bit closer to Derek. It must feel awkward for a little kid to have two new additions to what was usually a special family affair. You offered him a smile, but tried not to stare at him. You were so eager to get going already. The clock was ticking. You didn't want to miss a single activity. Derek awkwardly took a couple large steps forward. His strides were wobbly as Nicholas held onto him tighter, but Derek was ultimately unfazed. We should start the day right. The face painting stall is up here near the front. Face painting! George brightened with the notion, and Nicholas shook Derek as hard as he could without shaking himself off. Derek's grin widened as he laughed at his brother's delight. Yeah, let's go. Face painting? Are you sure? Are you serious? Nicholas was too absorbed with thoughts of paint to notice her attitude, but George's joy vanished instantly. You could pinpoint the exact second, and Elizabeth remembered how much younger Derek's siblings were. Elizabeth uncrossed her arms, feeling a bit rotten. She cleared her throat and begrudgingly tried to pull back on her visible distaste. I don't need one. However, of course, we can go over to that stall. Anyone who wants to do it should. That's great. Honestly, there's a lot of time to do tons of things, so it's not a big deal. If sometimes it isn't what you want to do, right? I have no idea what I just read. His green stare hardened. He directed the statement at both the youngest and the oldest member in the crew. Elizabeth snorted, displeased that a kid like Derek was acting like he was in charge. But Derek wasn't in his respectful guest mode, which is what Elizabeth usually saw of him in the neighborhood. Derek was entirely the eldest brother role. He kept a stern stare on her for another moment before shifting to you. Are you alright with letting my brothers get their faces painted? You can too if you wanna. It's actually a lot of fun. I don't want to do the face painting, but I don't mind if you guys get it. I don't mind going, but I don't want to get painted either. That's fine, Michiko. You'll be there for more support, right, guys? Yeah. I mean, I was never into the face painting thing, even as a kid, because, like, in my head, I'm like, how the fuck am I taking that all off when I get home? Or, like, how would that look if I leave the event area to go to somewhere more casual because my parents decide to go grocery shopping right after or something? That's why I never got my face painted. Because those thoughts that crossed my mind. Even now as an adult, it's like, no, I don't want to. Even though I know how to take it off now, but, like, no, thank you, not for me. Maybe, like, I don't know, caricature, I could go for that. Face painting, not so much, but I'm not gonna flack you for wanting to do it. Before anyone moved, Derek carefully removed Nicholas's hand from his pants and took a hold of the young boy's hand instead, like his mom had done before. Derek cheerfully pointed ahead with his free hand. Derek led the way for your group. You followed his line of sight to the row of shops and spotted a large colorful umbrella. As you approached, you noticed two open chairs under the shade of the umbrella, one for the artist and the other for the person being painted. Next to it was a canvas posted with a collage of photos. The examples showed off cheeks dotted with daisies, sparkling gold stars shooting over temples, peace signs, and a whole rainbow of butterflies. Skulls and spiders were options for kids who wanted to get their face painted and still look tough. Someone like Cove, you thought to yourself, chuckling. Of course, that was only a joke. Your positive Cove would actually get a fish or a shell or a dolphin or something like that. You peeked at the painting tools in the mirror on the wheeled counter. The artist appeared to be a teen just out of high school or maybe in college. Many of the stalls you passed had younger people running them. The artist eyed your group carefully in return. Hello. Hi, welcome. I'm Xavier. Would you like me to paint your face today? Yes, please. Xavier went over and plopped down on one of the chairs. Derek nudged George towards the other. Do you want to go first? George hesitated and chewed at his bottom lip, but he wasn't sure until he realized that no one else moved to take the open seat. He seized the opportunity and sat down. What can I do for you? I want a football. Right here. Without missing a beat, George pointed to his forehead. Elizabeth huffed quietly at the conversation, but Xavier gave a serious nod. I can do that, no problem. The artist lightly brushed George's bangs aside and began to work. Next to you, Derek's brow furrowed intently as he studied the picture collage of options. I don't think you could possibly think any harder without breaking your brain. What's the problem? But Derek continued to quietly mull things over. He pressed a hand to his chin and sighed. Nicholas will get what I get. I'm not sure what's to get because of that. He doesn't like soccer as much as George likes football, so that's probably not the best choice. I could get a car for obvious reasons, but Nicholas also really loves rainbows, and he does already have cars on his shirt. Yo, Derek is so considerate. Just get the car. You can't lose to that. It's sweet that he loves rainbows. Let him have one. You could get a spider. Nicholas could pretend it's a real one to scare people. Another rainbow. Chuckling, Derek shook his head at your enthusiasm. He raised his hands in surrender. I'll get a rainbow. I didn't think the football would be like that. I thought it was going to be, like, horizontal on top of his brows. Yo, how much you paying for that? How much did you pay for that? If he asked for more than, like, maybe $5, hell no. George's football didn't take long to finish at all. He got up with a delighted grin and tried to tip his head enough to see the painting without a mirror. He couldn't, but that didn't put a damper on his fun. One of his hands hovered around the football, and you knew that he was fighting the urge to poke at the wet paint. Derek slid onto the customer chair next. Nicholas leaned his hand on the edge of the seat and intensely watched the artist get to work. As the painting took shape, the smile on Nicholas's face grew. He gasped loudly in amazement the second he finally figured it out. That is so cute! This is way cuter than George's football that's, like, between his brows. I'm sorry, George. The artist proudly added the finishing touches, but then addressed the youngest Suarez instead. Xavier twirled their paintbrush. Now, what do you think? It's awesome. Just what I like to hear. You're good to go then. Thank you. Derek took one last glance at himself in the mirror and hopped off the chair. He pointed at the open seat with his thumb. Your turn, Nico. Nicholas clambered onto the chair with a pinched brow. Once he got settled, he sat up tall like a big boy. Hello, what can I do for you today? A rainbow. Xavier's gaze instinctively went back to the piece that just finished on Derek. They immediately put together what was happening. That's a great idea. Let's get started. Nicholas nodded and then put all of his mental energy into holding still. You weren't sure how long the 6-year-old could keep that up before he started to squirm. Aw, Derek, you look so cute! I'm so glad we went with the rainbow. Glancing over at George one more time, Derek kept most of his attention on his littlest brother. Without moving his gaze, he tilted his head in your direction. So, Michigo, be honest with me. How do I look? You look cute. Is there cute? You gave him a thumbs up. Don't worry, Nicholas will never pull it off like you. Nicholas is gonna wear it better. You never looked better. You look great. Thumbs up, man. The movement caught his attention. He turned directly towards you. A soft smile tugged at his lips. Bro, you're so cute. You're so cute. Thanks. He gradually leaned closer to whisper. From that distance, you could easily tell which places the paint was already dry on his skin. I don't want to look too silly out there. Don't worry, Derek. You're so cute. After that, you both settled in to watch Nicholas get painted to match. Stroke by stroke, Xavier started with the outer lines and then filled in the center of the drawing. It wasn't long before it was complete. You're set. Ah, these two are cute. George, your football! It looks like a third eye now that I think about it. Nicholas jumped out of his chair with a brand new rainbow adorning his cheek. He rushed over to rejoin his brothers, excitedly pointing at the painting. Welcome back, Nico. Look what I got. Nice. It's great. Now that Suarez brothers were happy and painted, it was time to discover the next activity. Derek paid for him and his brothers. Have a good day. You too, Xavier. Alright, Elizabeth, that wasn't that long. Your group gave one final round of thank yous to Xavier before moving on from the stall. The flow of the crowd brought you all drifting down the boardwalk. Excuse me. As you traveled further in, you actually spotted your parents. The Suarez boys jumped and waved, and their dad did exactly the same thing across the way. Next to Miss Suarez tried hiding her ear-to-ear grin with her hands. Her moms had their heads close together, laughing at Mr. Suarez's reaction. You jumped and shouted, jumped and waved quietly. Why not? Jump and wave. Throwing your hands together in the air, you waved them like crazy as you bounced in place. Elizabeth sidestepped away from the group, not wanting to be associated with the undignified behavior. Mom spotted you right away and pointed Mom in your direction. They joyously waved back to you and Elizabeth. Then your parents continued on with their own adventure. Your group traveled further down the boardwalk. You browsed a long rows of shops, pointing out all the interesting things on sale. As the afternoon stretched on, your gang continued to enjoy the boardwalk. Elizabeth took long strides and led the pack, cutting her way through the crowd. Everyone was willing to follow her. The Suarez brothers were giving her some leeway. No, leeway since it was her first time there, and you were used to your older sister's attitude. She was making a beeline to the roller coaster, the singular big kid ride at the boardwalk, and nothing was going to stand in her way. You kept up with Elizabeth and walked alongside her. You hung back. I want to be with Derek, bro. Elizabeth was fine on her own. You weren't just there for the rides. You wanted to spend time with your friend. Nicholas had stopped holding on to Derek, instead flitting around on his own. Derek continued to keep a sharp eye on him. He occasionally pursed his lips when Nicholas was on the cusp of wandering further away than safety allowed. He watched the little boy as well. His attention wasn't nearly as single-minded as Elizabeth's. He eventually started to lag, unable to keep up with Elizabeth's breakneck pace. Nicholas tottered at the end of the group, slowing his pace, falling behind, then bursting forward to catch back up. It happened on repeat. His eyelids drooped and his head bobbed forward. There was an expression of vacant determination on his face. It was a special kind of stubbornness only the youngest people in society could muster. The type where the concept of stopping wasn't just ignored. It flat out didn't exist in their minds. Luckily for Nicholas, he had a more self-aware big brother who could set limits for him. Hey, let's sit down for a second. What? It's a long walk, especially if you've got small legs. So you mean for you? That's right, I do need to take a break. Derek willingly accepted Elizabeth's shot at his stature. You could guess why pretty easily based on his leading tone. If Derek wanted to rest, Nicholas would want that too. Oh, poor Nicholas, so he was getting tired. I mean, the boardwalk is pretty long, and there's a bunch of shit, like, people, and, like, bundles of people all in the same area, so you had to like fight your way through. So yeah, it's understandable. Derek scanned the area and pointed out some tables in the distance. Elizabeth glanced at the path ahead once, but didn't argue about changing course. She picked an empty table that looked to be the cleanest of the selection. Everyone took a seat with a marked preference for sitting under the shaded hearth. You grabbed your water bottle and took a long and refreshing drink. It remained relatively cool on your tongue. Aw, it's like he's hugging him. Derek hefted Nicholas up on his lap. His brother wiggled slightly until he found a comfortable position. Michiko has the right idea. It's watertight. Nicholas gave a no audible response. His eyes were completely closed. However, he did accept the water Derek placed into his hand. He sipped it sluggishly. Unfortunately, Nicholas tipped the water bottle upwards until it started to spill. Derek snatched the bottle back and chuckled. Nicholas opened his eyes slightly, barely perturbed by getting splashed. He rubbed his wet face on Derek's shirt and stayed resting against his chest. Derek patted his head. You have to admit, it was cute. Elizabeth, on the other hand, and George are not satisfied. Elizabeth and George drank their water too, side-eyeing the scene but not saying a word. You should drink, Derek. No, you should drink. Thanks, I will. He pulled out his bottle with a smile and began to hydrate. George finished his drink with a final chug. He inclined his head towards his two brothers. Nicholas is gonna fall asleep. Elizabeth twisted the cap back on her bottle. She was ready to go. What now? Nicholas let out a small, snuffly noise, a snore. Derek looked down at his clearly sleeping little brother, but it was no issue for Derek. He brushed it off as easily as Elizabeth's insult. It's cool. I found our parents and they can look after Nico while he naps. Mom and Dad won't mind taking him along since he's down for the count. They're probably sitting at one of the restaurants or browsing a store or something. Elizabeth nodded, glad it wouldn't be her problem. George appeared more hesitant. He peeked at Elizabeth and then back to you. Derek smiled reassuringly and continued to pitch his plan. Plus, Elizabeth wanted to ride the roller coaster. I would have had to sit back with Nicholas anyway since he's too short for it. It just makes sense for you three to do that while I'm dropping off Nicholas, so go get that ride. I'll catch up later. George sighed. He was being left behind thanks to Nicholas, but was placated? I don't know. Enough to not argue with his older brother. Can I go with you, please? Derek's brows furrowed at your request. Do you really want to come? It's just going to be a chore. You'd have more fun with Elizabeth and George. No. No, far from that. George and Elizabeth seem like they're the same types of people right now, okay? I want to be with you, Derek. I'm only here for you. He waved off his concern flippantly. Fun's fun. I wouldn't have asked if I didn't want to go with you. Derek gave you another minute to change your mind. When you didn't, he beamed brightly back at you. All right, you're with me. Of course I am. Derek continued, now full of eagerness. We have 2 teams and 2 missions. Pass Nicholas over to the parents, ride the roller coaster while that's happening. Let's go get it done. Michiko and I will meet you at the ride, so you can stay there if you finish first. The plan met everyone's approval. Elizabeth faced Derek. Well, thanks then. Her tone was lukewarm and could easily be mistaken as sarcastic. Derek shot you a look, not completely sure if Elizabeth was being serious or not. You held in a snore and discreetly nodded back at Derek, willing to play Elizabeth's interpreter. Derek relaxed and smiled at your sister. He winked at you while Elizabeth and George began to get up and ready themselves. We'll see them soon. He carefully shifted Nicholas around from snoozing on his lap to buoyed in his arm. Gently he eased onto his feet. You dealt with your water and sprung up to your feet. You waved. Both Elizabeth and George waved back at you. Derek began to speed walk, moving quickly but smoothly enough to not jostle his brother too much. You had to keep up a good pace and not be left behind. There was no dawdling, no distractions, despite the best attempts of the boardwalk to draw its guests' attention with dazzling displays and enthusiastic employees. Derek might as well have been walking through an empty hall. You followed your friend down the line of stores, peeked into restaurant windows, but there was no sign of the parents. Your steps started to slow down as you checked another side of the massive boardwalk. This might take longer than I thought. It'll be alright. He kept upbeat as he pressed his face into yet another window. Still nothing. Maybe George and Elizabeth will have time to ride the roller coaster twice. It's not like that'd be horrible for them. Though, there his enthusiasm flagged a little. It does suck that you're stuck with this. Sorry. What the heck? I didn't want to ride the roller coaster. I didn't want to ride the You lied. I'm not stuck anymore. I'm spending time with you. I'd rather be here. He's so cute, blushing. Oh, thanks. I'm glad you came with me. He blushed and busied himself peering to the next restaurant. After a bit more searching, Derek spoke again. Do you like roller coasters, or are you scared of them? No, I like them. I think roller coasters are great. The corners of Derek's lips raised. We'll have to ride it together later. Elizabeth and George can deal with going again. His response made you glad that you were friends. Actually, my family really likes going to amusement parks. I've been to this boardwalk probably more than 5 times, and we've gone to other places. Some have a lot more ride options. Oh, and water parks too. He continued chatting along about his favorite water park as he searched down the boardwalk. There are slides and lazy rivers and those giant buckets that dump water on you. It's amazing lucky I've never been to one of those. I have, actually. Besides this, I've only been to those really kitty theme parks for babies. It's amazing. It's nothing. He's so cute, bro. He dismissed your amazement, flustered and sped up his pace, and you have plenty of time to catch up. You can keep coming along with my family. He listened carefully as he recounted his past theme park excursions. He ranked them on attractions, wait time, and stuff to keep your younger family members entertained. With the conversation light, you both laughed and smiled as you walked. Wait! He stopped in his tracks. Nicholas lightly thumped against his chest at the sudden loss of momentum. Derek readjusted him, and luckily Nicholas stayed asleep. I totally forgot we were supposed to be finding our parents. I wasn't even looking anywhere. He shook his head to refocus. We lost the plot. I guess it's time to get back to it. With that reminder, you both continued searching. Sleeping Beauty occasionally let out a snore, but other than that, Nicholas didn't contribute to the quest. You wandered all around the boardwalk, eyes peeled for any sign of your parents. The sky, holy shit! We have, the sky turned gold as the sun began to disappear on the horizon. You glanced out to the sea, and it looked as if the ocean was swelling the day. Lights began to click on, and the already shiny buildings of the boardwalk were set aglow. It took a moment to absorb the sun. It was nice to take a breath and ignore the noisy backdrop. It was then that you finally got an answer to your mystery. No wonder you hadn't noticed before. Derek, look! You pointed your finger straight at your realization. Derek jumped at your outburst and followed your command. He squinted in the distance before he dropped his jaw. As soon as he understood, he blurted out of shock. They rented bikes. Across the way, pedaling along to the two pairs of parents were having a lovely double date. They were far enough away that you couldn't see much more than their helmets, but you could tell that Mom was laughing about something with her head thrown back. That explains that, he muttered under his breath in frustration. He gritted his teeth as the annoyance drained. The cold truth hit him, and he whispered defeated. They can't take Nicholas on a bike. Derek shrunk in on himself. You watched Derek nervously. Derek kept his attention on his parents, not happy about whatever decision was happening in his brain. Finally, he let out a tired breath that was dangerously close to his sigh. His shoulders drooped enough to visibly lower Nicholas. I can't do it. I can't give him to them. Derek, are you sure? Derek flinched and worried his lip. But not one to keep the mood down, Derek tried to shake it off. A soft smile pulled at his face. He faced the sun and spoke into the slowly disappearing light. It's just one of those things. It happens. Nicholas twitched in his deep sleep and Derek pulled him closer. Okay, I don't know what this plan is, but I'm pretty sure Elizabeth and George are tired of just waiting around at the roller coaster. You waited for him to continue, with every word more confidence filled his demeanor. We should go see Elizabeth and George. They must be crazy wondering where we are. You agreed, but we're still concerned, still unhappy. I think I'll be a little unhappy at this point. It made sense to find the rest of the group, but you did not like Derek keeping his brother. You had gone off to find his parents for a reason, but Nicholas was his brother. You couldn't force Derek to part with him if he decided not to. Alright. You backtracked to the roller coaster. Derek was shuffling behind you. He'd slowed down from his bustling pace earlier. He had to be tired. Besides the sign that let you measure if you were tall enough to ride the roller coaster, Elizabeth stood with folded arms and George waved. We're here, all three of us. Elizabeth and George walked over and met you halfway. Hey. He scuffed one of his shoes on the ground. He felt the weight of Elizabeth's gaze and let out a nervous chuckle. He shrugged as if to say, yeah, the parents' plan didn't work. Sorry for taking so long. There was sort of a problem. Nicholas snuffled into Derek's shirt as he snored. Before she or George could ask for other details, Derek jumped in with other idea he hinted at. I'm gonna hold Nicholas until it's time to go home. The rest of you can keep having fun, go wherever you want. George uncomfortably pulled at his shirt, stretching the fabric at its seams. I don't want to go. I want to help. He visibly felt bad about all this being put on Derek. He got the impression that if George was a little bigger, that he offered to take a turn holding his baby brother instead. It's okay. I'll be fine. You really shouldn't waste all your time standing around with me. Plus, then who would help Elizabeth and Michiko around the boardwalk? They haven't been here before. You know this place and can make sure they don't get lost or don't miss the good parts. George turned to you and Elizabeth but hesitated with his answer. It would help me to know we didn't send them off alone. They're our guests, right? Okay. Thanks, George. Derek leaned closer to Elizabeth and whispered, I don't want George to miss out on the boardwalk because of Nicholas or because of me. Please go take him and have some fun. Elizabeth and Derek made eye contact, and for all you could figure, they had some sort of eldest sibling telepathy going on. That was the only way you could explain it, because rather than arguing, she agreed to work with Derek. I'll do it. Elizabeth then pressed her lips together and considered you. She snorted and then lightly flicked her nose. But I don't need Michiko with me. George is in a pain. Derek's brows creased, not expecting that. I can stay with Derek? I'll handle taking Derek out for some fun. You nodded and agreed with Elizabeth's nudging. You were frustrated with Derek, but didn't want to still abandon him. No, what the heck? You nodded and agreed with Elizabeth's nudging. Elizabeth smirked at your obvious relief. She occasionally liked to be a good sister. Michiko, good. My sister's on my side. She knows I'm just trying to be with Derek. Derek's voice was strangled and hushed. No, it's fine, baby boy. You're the guy I like. I'm staying. What about you? Why does it have to be just you? You could have suggested we take turns watching Nicholas. Derek shook his head and you felt your stubbornness spark. It's fine. Someone's got to be here for Nicholas, and it's easiest if I do it. That's all. Well, that's too bad because I won't go. George, show me something interesting. George gulped but nodded. His gaze bounced between Elizabeth and your standoff with Derek, and he wisely decided to take his leave. He led Elizabeth away, passing by all assorted stalls. He seemed to have an idea of where he was going, so you figured he and your sister would probably have a good time. Derek shifted his weight from foot to foot, bouncing around like the floor was on fire. It got more panicked the further away your sister and his brother got without you. Michiko, you have to go. I'm the one who decided not to give him to our parents. It's not your fault. It's mine. You need to go have fun. You need help more than I need fun. You're not getting rid of me. When the other two were completely out of sight, Derek stopped his frantic movement, having spent all his excess nervous energy. He met his gaze head-on, staring at the friend who simply couldn't help himself from being helpful. Oh my god, Derek's a people-pleaser. Sir, you're gonna have a rough life ahead of you. Speaking from experience, his face changed into something tense and small. You wondered how many times he did this, took on all the responsibility so that others didn't have to be bothered. It didn't seem like he was called out on it much. Slowly he smiled. His grin was tender enough to be genuine. Well then, if you're gonna be here anyways, we don't have to make ourselves miserable. It's you and me, and well, Nicholas time. Now you're talking. He lifted Nicholas higher and stood tall, ready to take on the world. Then his knees buckled and he blushed. Can we sit down somewhere? Yeah, that's probably a good idea. After spending all that time searching high and low, both of you needed a break. You both dragged yourselves over to a nearby bench. It was thankfully empty and away from the crowd. Derek took a heavy seat and exhaled deeply. He kept Nicholas clutched close to his chest. It was a familiar motion, one that Derek must have done hundreds of times before. I get why Nicholas is so attached to you. Maybe you shouldn't take on everything yourself. You don't like getting help, do you? I gonna stay quiet. You kicked your feet idly and leaned your head back. The sun had dipped further down. The darkness was starting to grow. It wouldn't be long until there was more artificial light than natural. There was a family across the way, a couple of adults who you assumed were the parents, and a small gaggle of kids. One of the smaller kids was throwing a tantrum. One of the adults knelt to talk to the child, while the other ushered the older kids down the boardwalk. You noticed that Derek watched the family as well. The kid stopped crying. The presumed parent resolved the situation. The kid gave a big toothy grin. Neither you nor Derek said a word as they walked off. After you both had settled, Derek carefully reached into his pocket. He struggled to dig around to find what he was searching for. Aha! He pulled out his special snack baggie in triumph. It was still completely full, untouched from this morning. Derek tried to pick out some morsels from the bag, but it was even harder to keep Nicholas from flopping over. Need some help there. Derek flushed at your offer and became self-conscious over the fact that you noticed his difficulty. Despite his embarrassment, he passed the snacks to you. You took the bag and he steadied his hold on Nicholas. Oh, I just need the granola chunks. You can leave the other stuff in there. Is that your favorite? Yeah, but no. You squinted at him in confusion. He laughed cheekily, having expected your reaction. It's my favorite snack in the bag, but that's not the reason I want it. The other stuff isn't for me. There's a handful of the cereal Nicholas secretly likes. That way he can have something that's not just candies and cookies. I brought the walnuts for George, in case we were out too long he got hungry, and he dropped his gaze from you shyly. Oh my god. Oh my god. This boy has my whole fucking heart. The gummy candies are for you, you know? Because maybe to get hungry too. Holy fuck. That's for handfuls. Holy fuck. You're so fucking cute. What the fuck? You always think ahead. That's so nice of you. You shouldn't use your snack bag for other people. Stop doing everything for everyone else. No, that's really fucking rude. And what if you needed more for yourself? You beamed at his consider. No, I'm gonna beam. What the? He was such a nice person. It's nothing. His tone was bright at your encouragement. Bro, but the thing is, he thought of me. He thought of everyone, including himself, but not as much for himself as he should be. But like, he thought of us as well. What the hell? I'm sure they did the gummy thing because I chose that first, obviously, because that's, you know, my favorite. Do you want any gummy candies? You can take it. You should eat it. It's your special snack bag, you know, and it's up to you. Shook your head and refused. Sure, thank you. Derek beamed, more than happy to share. His planning had come in handy. He appreciated the snack. See, yeah, I don't want him to like feel like his thought process wasn't important if I didn't eat any of it. You carefully fished out some chunks of granola. They were slightly sticky to the touch. You dropped them into Derek's outstretched hand. He popped one of the tiny oat clusters into his mouth and started chewing. You decided to pull out your own snacks. You wanted to eat and share your own snacks with Derek. You offered Derek some of your own snacks. Here, you want some of mine? Want some? You had out your baggie in a place where you could just pour it out for Derek if he said yes. His eyes lit up in amusement to consider your snacks. That'd be great. Sharing is caring. You tipped some snacks out of your bag for Derek, and he gratefully munched on them. Both of you leisurely enjoyed the time. The bench was comfortable, the food was delicious, and the scenery was busy enough there was always something to watch. The munching and high-pitched snoring served as the only sounds between you for a while. You passed Derek the last cluster of granola. You had to really try to get it out of the bag around all the sear unwanted chunks. He accepted it with great enthusiasm and then took his final bites. He swallowed satisfied. He absentmindedly patted Nicholas's head as he peered up and down the street. Something caught his eye and he lit up. You know, I was so focused before I kind of forgot where we were. This is still a boardwalk. He was as excited as he had been towards the beginning of the day. Want to walk around? There's a lot of interesting stuff here, even if we're only looking. Sure, I feel like strolling. Maybe I'd even get a good saunter on. Derek gave you a thumbs up and then what? At Nicholas. Can you help me move him to my back? That'll be easier for a long haul. You stood up to help. It took both of you fumbling around, but with effort you were able to get the little boy comfortably on Derek's back. Then you left the bench behind to explore the bustling waterfront park. Without consciously deciding to, you gravitated to the edge of the path closest to the sea. You studied the beautiful ocean, your breath almost taken aback by how the water sparkled under the last flickers of sunlight. The evening remained pleasantly warm despite the encroaching darkness. Is it normal for Nicholas to fall asleep like this? Kind of. Sometimes something is so exciting that Nicholas bounces off the walls just imagining it. By the time he actually gets there, he's already burnt himself out. I'm pretty sure Nico didn't sleep at all last night because he knew today was going to be a boardwalk day. That's cute. That sucks that he's missing this. Will he be upset that he slept through, Yeah, nodding understandingly. Derek grinned and pressed his cheeks into Nico's. Your parents should give you a raise. I hope George and Elizabeth are having a good time. I hope Nicholas says at least he's having a good... just observe the sunset. It's kind of funny imagining what our parents are up to right now. Maybe they're popping wheelies all across the road. You nodded and listened to him and continued to chat. Walking down the boardwalk was peaceful. The conversation was easy with an occasional giggle. Other groups of people passed by, couples, young friend groups, and families with children all bustled about. You caught slivers of conversations, ranging from the mundane to philosophical. Derek glanced at the faces around him and grinned to himself. It kind of feels like we're parents and this is our kid. We're playing house now? He twisted around to show you Nicholas with amusement. You're right. Oh yeah, our next trip should be to a wedding chapel. Yeah, haha, I'm glad he's not actually a kid. Yeah, you blush, not sure. It'd be nice if it was true. No, our next trip should be the wedding chapel. I bet that would be fun. Nicholas could be the ring bearer. Would he stay awake for it? Maybe, maybe not. You both laugh at the absurdity. As he led you down the boardwalk, you notice a new skip in his step. Hey, I have an idea. Let's ride the Ferris wheel. We've officially given up on getting our parents, and even Nico can do that. That'd be perfect. You're a genius. How high is it? Is safe? No, that'd be perfect. Derek let out a whoop and turned around like it was a little happy dance. You cheered. You laughed, charmed by his enthusiasm. If you keep that up, you're going to wake up the sleeping dragon there. Even if I did, we'd drag him to the wheel anyways. That'd rock him back to sleep. You smirked. Derek had an answer for everything. You both eagerly made your way through the crowd to get in line for the one ride that was an option for you. Derek cautiously weaved past people, making sure no one accidentally bumped into Nicholas on the way. The line was short, and it didn't take long for you to start boarding the ride. You piled into the cab and Derek placed Nicholas in the corner of the metal bench. He sat next to him. Nicholas snuffled when he was jostled but didn't wake. Derek wrapped his arm around him to secure him from falling forward. Nicholas unconsciously leaned his head over to rest on him. You rested on the bench across from them, eye to eye with Derek. It felt sturdy under you. Derek's grin widened. He tapped his toes together as he waited for the ride to start. And it did. The carriage car rocked forward, slowly ascended into the sky. You could see the entire expanse of the boardwalk from the cabin. It was an amazing sight from this height. The stalls and decorations looked like a magical land of toys. You glanced at Derek, curious if he was enjoying the view. The sun had continued to sink as the Ferris wheel rose, and the light that reached inside the cabin through the window was low. My voice is dying. Sharp edge shadows cut across Derek's body. He'd stopped shuffling his feet and switched to tapping a finger against the top of his knee in a jittery, uneven beat. With Nicholas still sound asleep, it felt like you were alone with Derek. But not really. He smiled at you in good humor across the way, but there was an undercut current of that nervousness, and the shake of his head had betrayed it. In that small space, high in the air, with no one else around, Derek took the chance to open up to you. Michiko, do you remember what we were talking about back on the bench? How I like to do things for people and stuff. Yep, I definitely remember. Derek clasped and unclasped his hands like he was working over bread dough. The bashful whisper of his tone made his secret hard to catch. Well, this sort of thing is kind of like a dream or something I've got. I waited for him to explain. Derek shifted shyly. His head went low, but his eyes glanced up at you. When Derek spoke again, it was in a tiny voice. I'm talking about having somebody who's there when stuff like this happens. Is your love language quality time? Your eyebrows shot up, but the rest of your body froze in place. Derek timidly sunk down in his seat. He brushed his little brother's bangs away from his closed eyes. It was a nervous, momentary distraction. Nicholas offered him some emotional support just by being there. I like thinking about the people I love. I really seriously do like doing stuff that makes them happy. I don't want to have to stop doing any of that, even though it's annoying sometimes. Annoying for me and whoever tries to stick with me. He showed an apologetic grin for a moment before his intense earnestness returned. Derek tightened his hands into fists. But I don't want to have to make that better by doing more for myself and less for them. What I really want is someone who's there for me. Then it'd be even. Yo, quality time has to be his love language, because it's definitely mine. My family cares about me, obviously, but a lot of the time, that's the thing I need help with. With a laugh, Derek literally tousled the hair of the beloved pain in his side, who laid there. The youngest brother remained blissfully unaware of the trouble he's caused. The humor in his tone left Derek as quickly as it had appeared. He couldn't get away from how serious the topic was, or how much it truly meant to him. It'd be cool to have somebody who was on my side and who liked me because of me, not because their family and are supposed to love me. For a single instant, his eyes met yours, but then he instantly focused on the world outside the scuffed, clouded window of the old Ferris wheel. You could see a lopsided grin reflected in the glass. Don't tell my bros I imagine some pretty dumb things. It's not dumb. That's normal and nice. I promise this will stay just between us. You do have that. I'm here for whenever you need it. I'm sure that dream will come true for you. No, you do have that. Thanks. What if Derek was just fishing for me to say that? And he got it anyway. The foggy face you could make out in the window pane trembled. He wasn't ready to show it directly, but you were glad he still got a glimpse of it. He grasped the top of one knee and took in a deep breath through his nose. When he exhaled, he carefully laid out a few more words for consideration. Hey, Michiko, is there somebody that you think... Without thinking, you leaned forwards towards him. You were hanging on his words like the cabin you were seated in was suspended from the wheel. But you never placed the last part. Fuck. Don't do this to me! What do you want? Never mind, forget it. You can ask me anything if you want to. No, you can't leave it there. You're killing me, you joke. Wait, I want to know what you're going to say. It's alright, you can tell me later. No, you can't leave it there. Sorry, but don't worry about it. No! It was just this idea I've been kicking around, but I should probably think about it a little more. A lot more. Besides. Bro, what the fuck? What were you gonna say? Derek shrugged an arm and cocked his head down to the extra bit of company who was still gently snoring. It's kind of awkward to talk about all this personal stuff with my baby brother right here, even if he is asleep. He chuckled good-naturedly, moving his hand to scratch behind his ear. Maybe I can try again later. You better! The back of his foot knocked against the lower wall, the outcropping metal seat on repeat. It sounded the end of that conversation, but that didn't mean nothing else was on his mind. Derek was always considering something, and most of the time it was other people. Things someone else might have missed or forgotten were taken for granted by him. Thanks for helping with the snacks before. That piece of appreciation was given easily. The next, though, was far meeker. It was nothing. Thanks for letting me come with you. Anytime, Derek. Thanks for letting me come with you. Because it's hard for him to, take help. So, this time Derek shared his bright and bashful face directly with you. You could always count on him. That was a certainty. And Derek knew that the sentiment was mutual. You would look out for him whenever he did it for himself or not, whether he asked you to or not, and whether he wanted you to or not. That was just as sure. Not much more was said before the ride came to its steady, inevitable end. You disembarked from the cabin with Nicholas securely in Derek's arms. You strolled from the exit to the nearest stall to ask the employee what time it was. 8 p.m. was quickly approaching. We had better go to the meetup place. Can you help me get Nico on my back again? How about I carry him now? No, let me take a turn with the kid. How about I carry him now? Instinctively, Derek pulled back. He clung tighter to his younger brother, while keeping the weight of that burden squarely on himself. He waited calm and stable. Ultimately, the tension in his face and the hesitancy in his heart faded, and he accepted your offer graciously. That actually would be great. Thanks, Michiko. Derek shifted his grip on Nicholas before he propped the small boy over his shoulders. You tucked your elbows around Nico's knees and hunched over so he wouldn't slip off. Nicholas draped heavily on your back like a fluffy car-patterned cape. He really wasn't that heavy, but you could easily imagine how carrying that extra load could get that tiresome after a while. Derek definitely needed a break. Perfect. Together you wandered across the path. The people surrounding you were full of enthusiasm, bustling from ride to ride and store to store, but a quiet peace had settled between you and Derek. Your day at the boardwalk was already coming to an end. The sky had gone completely dark by the time you reached the meeting spot, but the world around you was still awash with light. Street lamps bore down on you, while spotlights shot upwards to illuminate the biggest rides. You and Derek huddled at the side of the path. You wanted to stay out of the way of other visitors who were trickling off to the parking lot, and others who were rushing the opposite way for a last-minute excursion on the boardwalk. You hoped the strangers enjoyed themselves, but for you and Derek, plus the sleeping Nicholas, there was nowhere to go. At least not until you caught sight of your currently missing family members. We beat them. Good for us, we win. You used the break as an opportunity to readjust Nicholas. He started to slide a bit during the trip over. Since there were only 2 awake members of your group, you both wordlessly kept your eyes peeled. Every figure approaching in the distance was scrutinized, and then disregarded as just as another stranger. That process repeated for a few minutes, but eventually 2 shadowed forms coming down the path stepped under a light, and you immediately recognized them. George, Elizabeth. Derek jumped in and waved his hands over his head. He was entirely free to draw attention to himself that way, thanks to you taking over piggybacking Nicholas. Even on the other end of the boardwalk, you could tell Elizabeth was smirking. Oh my god! What is that, a golf ball? She finally got a painting on her as well, on the forehead. It's a golf ball, yeah? Wait, she likes golf, right? Because we go to that fancy smashy place all the time for the soiree. When Derek's brother and your sister rejoined you in front of the first stall, you were proven right. She definitely had a leering smirk. It's very cute that you're taking a turn with a precious baby. Ha! Derek barked out a laugh. Elizabeth's smile wasn't the only notable thing on her face, and even Derek wasn't polite enough to let her get away with it. Maybe, but what's that on your forehead? The oldest kid hadn't returned exactly the same way you'd left her. She now had a bright white golf ball emblazoned on her skin with non-toxic water soluble paint. So much for not needing something like that. After just a huff, Elizabeth plainly laid out her case. George and I talked a little bit about sports we like. When I told him I did golf, he suggested I get face paint of that. I did, and it was fun. Her chin was high, and she spoke with defiance. Elizabeth absolutely refused to be embarrassed by her change of mind. George stood at your sister's side and proudly took credit for the accomplishment. She didn't want to do it before because she was just being an Elizabeth brat. Huh? Better than being a Borge. George and Elizabeth chuckled at the quips. Apparently, they had unique nicknames for one another now. It left Derek nearly speechless. Clearly, you and Derek weren't the only ones who went through a bonding experience this evening. It smiled in relief that everything went well. You could easily imagine your sister being unable to mesh with a kid like George, but that fear had been fully unfounded. Your sister then exhaled calmly and followed it with a sage nod. I'll take Nicholas now. Oh. Whether Derek was going to agree or disagree with the offer, you didn't know, but Elizabeth didn't give him the chance. She wasn't suggesting what he thought she was. We've got like 10 or 15 minutes. The 2 of you should use it. You want us to leave him with you? Uh-huh. Derek took a hesitant step back and turned his face away. His expression tensed the same way it had when he first realized Nico was going to be asleep for the rest of the trip. Nicholas is going to be mad if I'm not there. The resistance was a weak mumble, and his middle brother spoke with much more boldness. Nicholas isn't going to know, and what he doesn't know won't kill him. George! Derek was at a loss on where that had come from. He didn't expect it either. George was never the rule bender. You must have missed even more than you thought during the time with Elizabeth. Derek, let's go for it. Come on, Boric. Leave a little. See, we're my heroes. We've got to go, Derek. Will there really be time? No, Derek, let's go for it. See, even your darling Michiko wants you to stop being such a goody two-shoes for a single second. Go have fun for Pete's sake. Yeah, hurry. You have to do stuff at the boardwalk while we're at the boardwalk. He shyly scuffed his sneakers on the ground with a doe-eyed expression that was more expected from Nicholas. It was exceedingly rare for anyone to tell Derek what the plan was. He was used to coming up with all the ideas and taking charge. Derek glanced at you. It was impossible not to smile at him. I'll do it. Then we're doing it. Finally, there was a quick passing of the buck as Elizabeth took Nicholas into her hands. She carefully positioned his head against her shoulder and cradled his leg on her forearms. Derek found the hold satisfactory and trusted his youngest brother to her, the same way he'd let her borrow the responsibility of watching out for her George. No more time was wasted. He shot off down the boardwalk one more time. The flow of traffic had shifted even more from when you started waiting, with everyone except for you moving towards the exit. You pushed against the tide into the heart of the park. Here's hand in hand. Hell yeah! The two of you had reached for the other on instinct. In the heat of the chase, neither wanting to be separated in the crowd and both yearning to be as close as possible. Bro, that's so cute. Aww. Your feet and heart were beating hard. Derek shouted over the sound in a breathless, thrilled voice. The lines are all going to be short this late, but I don't think we can do two. Which one do you want to do? Or we don't have to go on a ride at all. Would you be up for riding the Ferris wheel again? Let's hit the roller coaster. How about we get a treat? I want to do what you want to do. I honestly don't have a preference. Could we do the roller coaster? Because, he hasn't had the choice today at all. So let him pick. Definitely. Their joyous cheer betrayed how disappointed he must have really been to miss out on the roller coaster before. He had put on a brave face before and had the chance to get his due reward. You would make certain that he got on that ride. You and Derek sped straight to your goal. You couldn't help but tilt your head back every so often as the roller coaster loomed closer. As Derek had theorized, the lane was even half the length it was for most of the day. It only took a few minutes before you were on the platform and awaiting your ride. And even better, you got the very front seats on the coaster. You jumped into the cart along with Derek and pulled the safety bar down in front of you. He was bursting with anticipation, so the restraints were especially useful. A clicking sound like the winding of a clock chimed out, and the ride began its gradual climb upward. It reached the summit, and after an appropriately stomach-tightening pause, it rolled over the edge. Cool summer air rushed over your face and whipped your hair as you descended at breakneck speed. Derek threw his arms into the air as he squealed in delight. You were jostled in your seat, vibrating with the motion of the coaster. Derek and you took turns knocking to the other around every bend. You both laughed every time. When you came to a jarring stop back at the station, you lifted off the restraint together and made your exit down the other side of the ride. Derek ruffled his hands through his hair to straighten out his characteristic spikes. He was absolutely beaming on the way out. Derek stared at the sparkling stars beyond the glitz and glamour of the boardwalk. There was a peace between you that hadn't been there at any other moment during the trip. Hey. His eyes had stolen the shine from the cosmos when he placed his gaze back on you. It was way too awkward to talk about this before with my little brother right there, but I just want to say I really like hanging out with you, Michiko. I love my brothers and parents a ton, and my other friends are great too, but when I had to pick someone to team up with, I think about you. Oh my god. He shrugged his shoulders with a shy grin. Derek was someone you could count on for honesty, but sometimes it still surprised you what he was capable of. I think of you too. I'd partner with you anytime. He smiled back at him, he flushed and looked away. Thank you. I can't get why you didn't admit that earlier, you joked. I think of you too. Oh, cool. There was no haste or worry separation, but Derek's hand still found its... Oh my god! But Derek's hand still found its way around yours. You threaded your fingers together with his. The soft touch squeezed at your heart even more than your hand. Getting the chance to spend some time with truly just the two of you was more than you could have hoped for. You owed Elizabeth one. Yeah, I do. Despite taking an entire extra jaunt around the boardwalk, you still arrived at the entrance before your parents. However, there had been a shift in the group. Nicholas was awake. As soon as Derek noticed a small third figure standing by Elizabeth and George, he started like he was hit by a bolt. You felt him squeeze his fingers around your hand in his stunned state. He made a break for his siblings, bringing you along with him. The motion was not exactly subtle, and it caught the attention of the boy in question. He let out a shout when he saw your rapid approach. Well, technically it wasn't your arrival that had an impact. Nicholas sprinted away from the meeting spot, not willing to wait a single second, for the reunion. He crashed into Derek, wrapping his arms around his brother's thighs and sticking his head in the space between Derek's legs. It was powerful enough to knock Derek off balance. He had to release your hands so he could swing his arms out to the side to stop his wobbling. Once he was sure he wasn't going to topple over, Derek bent down and scooped up his hanger-on. Seeing Derek carrying Nicholas felt extremely familiar by this point, considering that he'd been the case for the entire afternoon. But Derek wasn't sick of it yet. He could handle it for a little longer. Derek nudged his head towards the other two members of the party, encouraging you to come. Together, you and Derek walked the rest of the way to the boardwalk entrance, while Nicholas clung onto Derek the whole way. George waved you over. Hey! At the moment you were in the whispering distance, you were greeted by a hushed message from your older sibling, your own big sibling. Good work. She put her finger to her cheek and smirked suggestively. It confused you for a second before you realized she had seen you holding hands. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thank you. You know, just another day of work, even from a distance. Derek slowly kneeled to let Nicholas get down. The little boy stood on his own 2 feet, but his hands didn't detach. They only grasped the hem of Derek's jersey instead. While brushing his brother's messy hair, Derek glanced up at Nico's temporary babysitters. He stared at them questioningly. What happened was the obvious unspoken question. He's only been up for a few minutes. You know, he was really grumpy at first because you weren't there, but we got him talking about the dream of adventure he had when he was sleeping to keep him busy, and that worked. It was really funny, and Nico had a good time too. George beamed with the pride at the success, and you noticed how much closer he stood to Elizabeth. Your sister accepted his company just as welcomely. They were their own partners in crime for the day. I'm basically positive that about 5 seconds he stopped telling us his actual dreams and was making it all up, but it was cute. Derek blinked at the two as if he had witnessed a miracle. It kind of was in a small way. He was able to pass the mantle of responsibility and everything turned out fine. However, Elizabeth and George wouldn't be replacing Derek anytime soon, or likely ever. Nicholas may have behaved for a bit, but now that his biggest brother was here, the young lad wanted to be taken care of. His gaze dropped to the ground as he pulled at the end of Derek's shirt. Derek, my tummy hurts. I want ice cream. No ice cream, Nico. That's not going to help your stomach. You can have some of my snacks to save you part of it. Derek's tone really sold the idea. It was full of appeal from the fact it was his snacks. He could hype up a product better than any of the employees running games on the boardwalk. Nicholas brightened immediately. He clasped his own collar and leaned his head all the way back to look up at his brother's face from where he stood against Derek's legs. He wasn't kept waiting for long. Derek pulled the baggie out of his pocket and sifted through the mix of walnuts and cereal to pick out the treat especially chosen for Nico. Once he'd collected a small handful, he passed it over to Nicholas, carefully dropping the round cereal puffs one by one. In Nicholas's tiny palm, the amount was almost overflowing. Nicholas gratefully received the offering. He shoved the whole thing into his face and ate directly out of his hand. To remind you of feeding oats to a pony. It reminded you of feeding oats to a pony. Except in this case, Nicholas was both the feeder and the fed. Derek nodded in satisfaction and rolled the bag over his palm. George, these are for you. He gathered the last wayward pieces of cereal and then offered the well-worn bag of nothing but walnuts to the middle child. It's been a really long day and there's still the ride back. You should eat something. George didn't argue with that. He gladly accepted his brother's thoughtful gesture. George plucked out just one from the pack, the heartiest-looking nut in the bunch, and took a bite out of it. His gaze shifted towards Elizabeth, or Elizabeth, as George knew her. As he swallowed his snacks, then he asked the question, "Do you want any?" "You know what? I would. Thanks." Elizabeth was the third person who took a turn of opening up a hand to receive a snack. George shook a few of the nuts in her waiting palm. "Derek, you and Machiko can have some too." Nicholas's finger remained pushed against his mouth, but his distinct chomping stopped. He spoke muffled words filtered through a handful of half-crushed cereal. "I can share too." He stuck his sticky palm up towards Derek's face instead of his own. The gesture had crumbs cascading down his shirt. Nico couldn't reach high enough to get it all the way to his brother's mouth. Derek shook with giggles and poked Nicholas's wrist to nudge the pile of soggy cereal away. He had to take a second to breathe before he could explain himself. "I've got some of the cereal right here. That'll be from you. Thanks, Nicholas. I'm gonna eat it." That logic seemed sound to Nicholas, or maybe just seeing his brother smile made Nicholas smile too. Either way, he accepted that not taking more of the cereal counted as him sharing it. But he wasn't done. Nicholas turned around on a dime. Arm still outstretched and positioned his hand towards you. Amazingly, he wanted to share with someone other than Derek. "You kiddos are all way too nice." You cooed at his sweetness. You smiled with forced politeness. You had no idea how to react. You matched Derek and laughed. You cooed at his sweetness. You knew he was trying to be nice and that was adorable. But before Nicholas could start flinging bits of cereal at you in his eagerness to share, a warm voice boomed above the din of the busy boardwalk. "Good evening, family and friends." It was Mr. Suarez, and not only him, you spot all four of the parents weaving their way through the crowd. "We're here." The sight of his mommy and daddy made Nicholas forget all about feeding you his pre-chewed snacks. He smashed the remaining cereal into his mouth so he could use both his hands to wave at his parents. "Dad, Mom!" Derek called back with equal excitement. The parents picked up the pace and came to gather around their children. Greetings were shared between adults and kids. Amelia and Ma noted the face paint that was now adorning your group. So creative. I feel left out now because I don't have one. Nicholas forced himself to swallow the mouthful. This was the moment he had been waiting for. He sucked in a huge breath, pointed to his cheek, and cheered. Rainbow! Wow, why, you're right. It is a rainbow. It's beautiful, Nico. Nicholas giggled gleefully at the praise from the grown-ups. Miss Suarez then clasped her hands together and changed the topic. Well, everyone, I'm sorry you beat us here. Hopefully you weren't waiting too long. It was fine. I appreciate you waiting here for us. We went on a lovely bike ride across the boardwalk. You were out there pedaling around on bikes? Mm-hmm. Elizabeth and George's face of genuine surprise at the news helped to distract from the awkward, knowing glances he shared with Derek. Returning them was a real hassle. That's why we got here late. Definitely worth it, though. It was. And did you children have a good day? Nicholas threw his hands in the air to answer with full force. Yeah! Derek softly patted his little brother's head. His voice was much quieter and distinctively relieved. Yeah. You, George, and Elizabeth nodded and offered your own points of agreement. It might not have gone as you had imagined, but none of you would consider it a waste of time. It was an experience worth having. I'm sure you made the most of what you had, but we better get going. It is very late. Perhaps we should pick up dinner on the way home. Absolutely. It's been hours since we left, and Nicholas can always sleep in the car since we won't be home before bedtime either way. After. All the kids except for Nicholas had their faces go completely flat, and Elizabeth snorted. Miss Suarez didn't miss that instant reaction. She raised a brow. Derek straightened the bands on his wrist and broke the news to his mom. There was a glint of amusement in his eyes. Sorry, Mom. I don't think that's going to happen. Nicholas remained oblivious to the discussion going on about him. He was sleeping and bounding from board to board, completely refreshed. His mother frowned. It was obvious to her what had occurred. Miss Suarez was unflustered. Mr. Suarez was unflustered. He shared some dignified optimism. He'll be up to keep us company. We'll be all together. Those words reached the small ears of the youngest person there. Nicholas held onto Derek's abdomen. Liking the sound of that promise, his older brother looked down at him warmly. Glad to have you back, Nico. And George, you're such a reliable bro. He wrapped one arm around Nicholas and reached over to pull his other brother into a hug. George welcomed and reciprocated the embrace. The Suarez trio snuggled together in a tight squeeze, and their flaking face paint rubbed off on each other. Your gaze wandered from the public display of affection and went to your older sister. Elizabeth was definitely not a hugger, but you whispered your own siblingly appreciation for her. Thank you for being such a reliable sis. She gave a smug flip of her hair. Forget it. I owed you one after your grand stunt for me on Daddy Day. Aw, Elizabeth. Aw, that's nice. It actually linked up. That was all that needed to be said. Your completed party took their final steps on the boardwalk, heading straight towards the parking lot. Miss Ware was leading the pack. Mom, hey, Mom! Nicholas shouted and waved to get his mother's attention from behind while still using one hand to grip Derek. Guess what? Elizabeth carried me. She did? That's so considerate. Elizabeth. Your moms were walking arm in arm, sharing hushed commentary with each other at distance from the group and tittering over what they heard. I carried it too when you were asleep. She only did it for... It was nice for her to do that. You're so sweet, Elizabeth. You snickered along with your mom. Just laugh. Jeez. I feel that who carried Nicholas with the most today should get the biggest say in what we have for dinner. I second that. Sounds fair to me. Then we all agree. I guess this means Derek will be our dinner decider for the night. Probably. Derek scratched the rainbow on his cheek and chuckled airily. He shrugged without comment and simply continued to walk. His little brother stayed at Derek's sides, and they bumped along together. You strolled with Elizabeth while the parents surrounded the sets of siblings at the front and from behind. Okay. Derek's hands were full with Nicholas and George, but he snuck a fond glance over at you. None of his excitement has faded. The night was still young and bright, and you knew you could count on every person there. Despite being miles away from Sunset Bird, you felt right at home. Oh no. We're about to reach the end of this DLC step 2 part. And then we're going to get into the juicy bits, hopefully, on his epilogue part. But the next episode, we are going to a soiree with Derek. Hopefully, with Derek. Only Derek. Please. I love his siblings and all, but I don't think we've had enough just Derek time. I think the only just Derek time we had is in the lemonade one, but that had Cove as well. So that was a little difficult on my heart. But thank you guys for watching today's episode. Stay beautiful, and I'll see you guys in the next one.